Hello, welcome to the Charles River Conservancy Parkland show. We today are going to look at a very interesting aspect of the parklands, and that is of how they are planned, how the neighborhoods adjacent to them are planned, which of course is so important to make those parklands vibrant, for people to come to the parklands and to have that connection between the neighborhoods and the parklands. We will be looking at North Cambridge, the Lechmere Canal area, and we have with us today a wonderful expert, somebody that has been working on that for 30 years. So I want to welcome Dennis Carlone, who is an architect and city planner, and his firm is Carlone Associates, and he has been a consultant with the city of Cambridge for some 30 years working on planning. Welcome,
Correct.
Dennis.
Good to be here.
So the area we're going to look at today is on the right-hand side of this map that you've seen before of the parklands, and it has, I put in some pins there. This is a Google Earth map, and the red pin shows the Lechmere Canal and the Charles River. So we'll be looking at this particular area here in Cambridge. Here again, Google Earth above, hovering above the Charles River, looking into the area of Lechmere Canal. But now we're going back into the 70s. But before we do that, Dennis, can you tell us of how this planning effort came about? When did it start? Why did it start? How does planning of the parklands and the neighborhoods work in Cambridge?
Well, in 1976, the city began looking for a consultant, an urban design consultant, to help them in the rezoning of this industrial area. Much of East Cambridge was zoned industrial in those days, and this picture even shows what the results of that were. People forget that Cambridge was the second largest industrial power of towns and cities in Massachusetts before World War II. And as industry left, there were a lot of vacant sites, a lot of demolished buildings, and part of it on the river, believe it or not, on the river there was a 40-acre swath of land that, as you see in this image, other than the Hotel Sinester, which you can see on the left-hand side bordering the river, just about everything else was a former industrial building. And Lechmere Sales is another building on First Street, but you can see the parked cars. It was two of the buildings on the river were completely empty. The Hotel Sinester actually was considering selling that location and moving the hotel, and it was just very much a wasteland other than Lechmere Sales and Warehouse Liquors of all things.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful to have that image to remind us of what a difference good planning makes, and what a different neighborhood and lively neighborhood that now is.
Well, part of it was also very little development was occurring in Boston and Cambridge in those days. People forget that. And the city asked me, after some initial studies, to look at the potential of that area. And this model shows a view from the historic neighborhood in the lower left-hand corner, the East Cambridge neighborhood. You can see the smaller houses. The dark brown buildings were existing industrial buildings at the time, and you can see toward Kendall Square, lower right, empty sites that were basically parking lots. But in this image, you see the plan that we came up with. We worked very closely with the neighborhoods and all the authorities, the different agencies, state and city, and of course the government in the city. But the light brown, the beige, were all proposed buildings. You can see there on the left-hand corner around that what became the Galleria, the Lechmere Canal, and of course along the riverfront.
Yeah, and the next one shows it kind of in a different way. Focuses more on the green spaces. To me, I always felt with the parklands, are so important for us. And there you really have like a finger reaching into the neighborhood, and surrounded by very urban buildings, which is to me, in a way, that is the quintessential of urbanity, where you have water coming together with
That's right.
parklands, with people living there, businesses, restaurants. I mean, that is really what urbanity is, and I think your plan has really accomplished
Well,
that.
that was one of the goals, there's no question. This neighborhood, East Cambridge, had the least amount of open space in the city at the time. So we knew that we needed to incorporate their needs. One, open space. The other is transportation improvements to get as much traffic out. And the third was a parking garage to limit the impact of parking in their neighborhood from the county courthouse. But the open space, this is a 13-acre open space system, and it became the backbone or the structure of the new development. Not only did it provide open space, very varied open space, 13 acres out of the 40, but it also provided opportunities for development to sort of encourage development. Every new building in the 40 acres was on a new open space, and that indeed did encourage development.
Yeah, and here I think is the same model you showed before, but looking from above the Museum of Science.
It's a little hard to read, but there are only two brown buildings that you see in the 40 acres, one of which was Hotel Sonesta. Nothing else was worth keeping. We tried to keep one other building, but unfortunately it was in bad shape. It was all 1910 on construction, mill buildings. Some actually took a long time to knock down. They were that strongly built. So this was a major vision. A very reputable author said this was a pie in the sky plan, which I love to hear because it just spurred us on even more.
Yeah, and you had some you created some visions in drawings to show that. Maybe we can just go through some of those.
Just quickly, this is of course along the riverfront and Cambridge Parkway. The state had a 5-lane highway between the buildings that were there, Hotel Sonesta, which is just off the view in this rendering, and the water's edge, and the city and the state together removed 3 of those lanes and created a boulevard. But this was also something that we wanted to do, creating a marina center, creating a lower walkway. These things didn't happen, but you'll notice that there's also an MDC, MBTA boat on the lower left there that we wanted to begin to provide places, stations for a future riverway of mass transit. Hopefully someday that will happen.
Yeah. Now, the next picture again takes us back into the 70s, just a kind of a different vision. It's just shocking of how there was no building. It was just basically all parking lots.
Largely parking, other than a few warehouses. Lechmere sales and the wholesale liquors actually looked worse than the buildings really were. The developers had put metal siding on it to make it look more economical. But it was a lot of parking. But what was interesting is it was controlled around the canal by the Museum of Science, the MBTA parking lot at the upper right-hand corner, Lechmere Sales, and the MDC, the then MDC, DCR now. So much of the edges were either public authorities or public nonprofits. So there was interest in upgrading it, and that was fortunate. The other fortunate thing is illegally we couldn't landfill it, thank God, because there was interest in that. And this is the same view with the plan. You see the canal reshaped, and Lechmere in this scheme was actually enclosed with a shopping arcade, in this case 2 stories. The Galleria was 3 stories, which was an improvement. Hotel Sonesta shows an addition, and housing and offices around the canal. But also further back you can see a garage, upper middle, with little cars on the top. That is the garage I mentioned that served the county courthouse just behind it, and also new development around the canal. So that parking allowed some of the smaller buildings to not have parking inside it, especially on the first floor.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is that is 100% built out. That's very rare.
Yeah, this has actually all been realized, and because it has the mix of people living there, people working there, shopping there. It's very busy, and the courthouse, which right now temporarily has moved, also brings people there.
Right.